Now we can see and hear you, Luise. Can you hear us too?
Hello, everyone.
Hello. We are now complete, perfectly sharp at 7 p.m. How's everyone? Now we can officially start. Calling in from Amsterdam, we heard just now.
Yes.
Jerome, where are you guys from? You are based in?
We are in Zurich.
Lovely. And Anna, you?
I'm in Copenhagen.
Oh la la, look at this. And Louise, you are based in?
Zurich.
In Zurich, another Swiss people. So I would like to kick off sharp as we started this webinar. We prepared a little structure, a little give overview of the project we were running throughout the half year. And then Luis will do some introduction with each of the authors so you can present yourself a little bit, what you're doing, and then ultimately be able to present your research work. Challenges and opportunities, the future of DeFi in traditional finance. This is the first batch of our call for papers. We have received numerous papers and we decided to have two batches so to give the authors the chance to present their research work. My name is Tilma. Together with Aurelia and Luis, we initiated this call for paper of the Crypto Valley Association Working Group Education, and wanted to show you a little bit our roadmap, how we came together in the early of the year, then discussed how we could implement and contact and reach out to the different authors, set deadlines, set milestones. Then had in June the deadline for the abstracts, which you all handed in. We worked through, contacted the different authors that the abstract is accepted. Then the final paper was collected in August, which we then ran through a rigorous scaling or scoring domains, right? We looked at time, we looked at your professional background. We of course looked at the English language, right? All this came together. I think we had in total 7 scoring domains. So if you then give points from 1 to 7, in the end, you have a total score, and then your paper was ranked one among the top. In September at the Lucerne conference, Aurelia announced the winners of our call for papers, and now we start in October with our virtual conference. We received numerous papers, just about 20 papers from what you can hear already, different locations from worldwide, mainly Europe, of course, but with all different backgrounds, right? We had topics, of course, on tech. We had topics on investment. We had topics on DAOs, right? Legal regulations. So all the topics which are interested in our industry. We promoted your content and get awareness for this call for papers through online content. We are on YouTube. We continuously uploaded updates. Where do we stand with the projects, right? Remind on the deadlines. Quite remarkably, the team is distributed. You see videos from Zurich, from Mexico, from Lisbon. So truly decentralized approach. Then I like, Luis, would you like to take over and
sure.
briefly introduce the 4 speakers, and then we go back and start with Anna's presentation.
Yes, so all right, so welcome also from my side, from Lisbon. So I'm happy to introduce like the 4 speakers or today, or even 5, because Jerome has also like a co-author with you. First of all, like Anna Sinova, she's like from Copenhagen, like the financial crime risk and control manager. And maybe you just want to say some words by yourself, like a short introduction, maybe 30 seconds, short pitch.
Yeah, thank you. I work in the banking industry, but I have a major interest in cryptocurrency. Originally I used to work in academia, but moved to the private sector. And with this paper, I hope I can contribute to banks embracing crypto even more in the future.
Great, thank you. I'm looking forward to the presentation. Then the next one is Luise Amerschumber. She's like from Zurich. Maybe you also introduce yourself like in a short 30 seconds.
Sure. Louise Amerschuber, director and founder of Yes Impact, a consulting company specialized in social, business, and impact investing, and with a special interest in bringing new technologies into the social impact space. So I've been involved in financial inclusion, microcredits for quite some years, and discovered that blockchain can actually play a really interesting role in that. So starting to create more awareness on that also through the paper. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Great, thank you. Looking also forward. Now we come to next one. It's Daniel van der Woede. He is like currently in the Netherlands, and maybe you also introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So my name is Daniel, and I work actually at a crypto currency project called Alliance Block. And I'm responsible for the product side of things with a distributed development team. We basically built DeFi infrastructure blocks that enable other companies, for example, to set up staking campaigns or liquidity mining campaigns. My background is in banking, where I worked in several departments among for example, fighting financial crime. But crypto has always drawn me, and I decided to make the step into the industry.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, we have Jérôme. He is like from Zug, Switzerland, senior crypto fund manager. And maybe you introduce yourself and also maybe your colleague. I think it's one of the co-authors.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. So my name is Jerome. I live in Zug, Switzerland, and I've been an investment banker my whole life, managing fixed income portfolio, credit, and high yields. And I've been moving to crypto less than 2 years ago. I really enjoyed the possibilities of financial engineering and also how to bridge traditional finance with the future of finance. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm one of the co-authors. I'm Cyril Bedick. I'm mostly an IT guy. I'm responsible of a lot of banks worldwide for the security setup. For KYC process, we have a product here in Switzerland developed by us. And mostly I'm interested in crypto because I'm invested since a long time. I know how blockchain works in 2009, and I always went along with it, and I want to bring it to the banks, to my customers.
Great, thank you. So yeah, then this was the introduction, and now we come to the first speaker, to Anna. She's like, or like her paper is about like how to trust from an AML perspective, all about like banks and cryptocurrencies. So it's about the question also like the future of the financial industry, how we can connect CFI and DeFi, and how we can do like a win-win situation out of that. And I think there's really like the AML rule part really important. So Anna, it's your stage. You now have time to present your paper. Good luck, and we're looking forward to your answers.
Thank you. Thank you, Luis, and thank you everybody for inviting me. Yes, I don't know, should I present the slides, or how do you want? I'm just thinking, because I've had, yeah, great. Thank you. So if you can, yeah. Basically, well, I have a legal background, so obviously this paper was written having, you know, the paper was written having a legal method in mind. If you can move, yes, thank you. I don't know if you have seen, but the EBA, the European Banking Authority, has published an opinion earlier this year. The opinion is about de-risking. De-risking means that financial institutions decide not to do business with certain stakeholders, certain customers. And some of them are crypto asset service providers. The EBA guideline, the EBA opinion highlights some challenges facing crypto asset issuers. These challenges are among other things, banks' excessive demands for KYC information, unreasonable terms and conditions, extraordinary fees, but also outright refusal to provide even basic account for salary payments and other ongoing expenses. And the reason for that is, of course, banks' risk appetite. Banks are, I mean, I work myself in the bank, which is very conservative, or which is very, which has a zero, you could say zero risk appetite when it comes to crypto asset issuers. So in principle, we will not onboard crypto asset issuers. Of course, here I present my own views. I don't present the views of the bank I work for. Yeah, and this issue, we see this trend throughout Europe, not only in Scandinavia, but yeah, I've come across an article saying that Portuguese banks act the same way. I think Switzerland is much ahead compared to other European countries. So this trend, this de-risking conservative risk appetite is a trend at the moment, unfortunately. So my article explores ways how basically it tries to answer the question what it takes for banks to embrace crypto asset issuers and crypto. So if you move to the other slide, please, thank you. I personally think that collaboration between banks and crypto asset service providers could be a win-win for both parties. There are certain, of course, now, you know, the EU is trying to regulate crypto. I think regulation alone is not enough, you know, because I think there is a fundamental lack of trust. Banks do not trust crypto asset issuers. They don't think that crypto asset issuers can manage financial crime risks. And even if, let's say, the EU comes in and says, comes in with a regulation, I don't think it will change. Of course, it may change a bit, but I think trust is, I think the regulation is not enough to create trust. I've tried to look at at certain things which potentially could foster trust, banks' trust in crypto asset issuers and service providers. One idea I have is that crypto asset issuers and service providers could organize themselves, in a forum, in an AML forum. Like we have Wolfsburg, for example, Wolfsburg Group. It's if I don't know if you know, probably those who work with AML know, Wolfsburg Group is an association, and it's a private association of major banks. 14, I don't recall the exact number now, but major banks throughout the world. What they do, actually accidentally, it is in Switzerland. Actually, it has its head office in Switzerland, Wolfsburg Group. What they do is that they're very influential. It's a very influential industry body. What they do is that they issue AML, anti-money laundering guidance, risk management material. So they don't wait for the parliament, for the legislator, to issue guidance. They do it themselves. And by doing themselves, they can, first of all, I think it's good that they do themselves because nobody knows business better than themselves. Politicians who sit in the parliament, they don't know the business. I mean, they are, many politicians actually have never worked one day in the company, so they don't know the business. So we cannot expect the legislator to create good regulation. And by taking this initiative, they can influence and lobby also for reasonable regulation. I know Wolfsburg Group, they have issued many questionnaires, guidance. Our own bank uses it, so it's very influential. And plus, public authorities like FATF, Financial Action Task Force, IMF, International Financial Monetary Fund, and other, UN, they all very much value, input. They consider Wolfsburg Group is a very influential body, and they obviously listen to what this Wolfsburg Group has to say. So my suggestion would be for crypto asset issuers and major ones, of course, I'm not talking about smaller ones, but major ones, to organize themselves, like crypto asset exchanges, to organize themselves in this industry body and thereby influence and lobby for reasonable regulation. Another idea I had is public profiling, how crypto issuers, they profile themselves publicly. You know, I've in August 2022, I reviewed, like I took 10 most popular crypto exchanges and I looked whether they had AML letters. AML letter, what is an AML letter? AML letter is not just a piece of paper. I mean, it's a letter. It is signed, usually it's dated. It's an AML letter. You could say it's a summary of how a financial institution manages financial crime risk. As you know, when we, for example, our bank onboards another financial institution, asset manager, for example, we want to know how asset manager manages its financial crime risk and what controls they have. And obviously, due to confidentiality, that asset manager will not deliver us procedures the same way we will not deliver our procedures to other entities. ML letters, they are public, they are not confidential, they're usually published on websites, and they are not too high level. I mean, they're high level, but still provide an idea of how the company manages its risk. I've looked at these 10 crypto asset exchanges, and only one of them had what I would call an ML letter. It was Gemini. In my opinion, I thought it looked very serious, like as a compliance, as a risk manager, like it looked serious from a financial crime risk perspective. Others, major ones, they didn't have any proper ML letters. They only had like statements, very short, a few sentences saying we comply with regulation, we comply with this and that. Of course they do that. You don't, I mean, it's, of course, if you are, if you're an entity, of course you comply with regulation. But ML letter gives an idea of how they actually comply with that regulation, what risk profile, what customers they accept, what customers they do not accept, So, so yeah, that was an observation I made reviewing, so how they profile themselves, crypto asset issuers and crypto exchanges, how they profile publicly. I think that's also important for trust between banks and crypto asset issuers. Then another thought I had, so these are two thoughts. Then another thought I had was, now in Denmark, at least, there are discussions, but I mean, there is no legislation yet and no legislative draft even, but there is a discussion. Some parties basically are lobbying for regulation which would make it a legal right to have a basic account, a basic business account, and maybe that would solve as well this issue, but let's see. I mean, that's something that is being discussed, because many small and medium-sized companies in Denmark, sometimes they face this issue that banks say no, they don't want to onboard a company because of their risk appetite. But if there is regulation forcing banks to onboard, of course subject to certain exemptions, then that could also solve. But at the moment, we have this problem, challenge that many crypto asset exchanges and issuers, they struggle getting a simple bank account, at least in Denmark, in the Nordics and other European countries. So this basically the paper tries to come up with some suggestions of how we can create a more trusting relationship between counterparties.
Yeah, that was a nice overview. Just like one question from my side, like to summarize this topic. Do you think like that MiCA will yeah, help this to move forward in this AML problem, or is it just like the beginning and there will coming like several other things like AML letters or like initiatives? Just like one short answer on that one.
No, I don't think MiCA is enough, because if you're a private institution, you can refuse. I mean, we are not like the banks are not charities. They're not. They can still refuse, to say no to certain customers. So there should be more than MiCA alone. I don't think that it will solve. Actually, that's my personal opinion. It's a step, but also, I mean, I'm skeptical sometimes of regulation, because sometimes I see regulation made by politicians, and I think sometimes politicians don't understand what they're regulating, because as I said, they have never worked in the company. They don't know how it works in real life. And they just sit in their offices. And I don't personally have, I'm not so optimistic that politicians can make good regulation. I think private stakeholders should themselves step up a little bit and lobby for reasonable regulation. Because regulation can be also bad, because then it can stifle. Too much regulation is not good either. It can stifle innovation. So it should be a balance. So.
Yep, great, thank you. Cool. Then I would say we just hand over like to the next presenter. Maybe Tilma, you introduce it.
Yeah. Let me take over on the next one. Thanks, Anna. Very insightful. I think this is absolutely up-to-date topic. We have these problems in the crossroads between blockchain and banking. Onboarding procedure, understanding business model. If they add a token to their project, it even becomes more of a problem, because you need to understand the token economy behind it. So I think this is absolutely a topic which has attention, and also a reason why we accepted your paper. Thank you for this. Now we're moving on. Exciting topic from Louise, director and founder of Yes Impact, focusing on social impact and upcoming technologies, mainly in the application in developing countries, correct me if I'm wrong, such as Uganda. But please take the floor from here and explain us on the other authors what your paper was about.
Thank you so much, Tilma. So we have around 40% of the global population that has zero access to banking services, to traditional banking services. That means nowhere to put their savings, nowhere to get credits to start their businesses. Absolutely in a dire situation. Reasons being no securities and reasons like that. Let's go to the next slide. In Uganda specifically, you have 41% of people that live in absolute poverty, most of them are active in agriculture. You have a total population of 47 million. 51% of these people still store their savings at home, which is why we started our project Yes Impact Blocks about 2 years ago, which is Village Saving and Loan Associations. It's a principle very similar to microcredits. And we've also used blockchain technology for that, which got me curious, how can we actually expand that? In Uganda, you have about, so far, 7% only of the population that are using microfinance institutions, 51% at home, so a huge market for expansions. Microcredits themselves, they've been very strong since the 2000s, gaining in popularity. Also a rapidly changing industry, and it's becoming very attractive even for the banks, because it has a very high repayment rate. So it's about 89.6% repayment, which is incredible in any investment space. Problem of microcredits in the country are there is very complicated loan application process, extensive paperwork, lots of risk of human and technological error. You have very slow transactions and banking fees. And the microfinance institutions definitely need more streamlined financial services and delivery channels. So there we really wanted to look into what could blockchain technology offer in this space. And I was curious to see, because in Uganda itself, there was absolutely zero information available. So I had to look around the world. Next slide. which is what I analyzed in my paper and came across some really interesting examples. So you have the applications of Moeda in Brazil, for example, which works with women impact entrepreneurs. You have Ulala in South America. You have Dasi Finance based on Solana. You have the Yes Impact Blocks project in Uganda itself, and you have Acumen. Very interesting examples and very diverse and reaching a lot of different people already, and also matching different demands, because what I see at the moment is there is massive demand from retail investors to institutional investors for microcredits themselves because of the high repayment rate, the high reliability. I've used to manage a microcredit program myself in Myanmar some years ago, excellent repayment rates. So what a company like Moeda, for example, does is it bridges the gap between the investors coming from rich countries and the local entrepreneurs in the countries, which are very, very reliable in repayment. And using blockchain technology, a combination of their own currency, Moeda, cryptocurrency, and a stable coin, which is pegged to the Brazilian currency, and making their transactions absolutely reliable, making them transparent. It increases the desire of investors to actually use this technology and access the microcredits. It helps enormous numbers of women entrepreneurs in the country. Similar to all the other examples that are mentioned here, I'm not going to go into details because of the time constraints, but what we see there is absolute transparency, accountability, huge market for investors, huge market for impact as well. You see people's lives absolutely being changed through the microcredits, through the use of blockchain technology. Next slide.
Yeah.
So if you look at the example of Uganda specifically, a lot of these examples that I used before can be scaled to Uganda, can be adapted to the local context. The advantages you will have for the microfinance sectors are incredibly low transaction costs. At the moment, when you transfer from Switzerland, for example, to Uganda, if you want to do a microcredit, it costs about 10%, 7 to 10%, incredible numbers. With blockchain technology, it can go down to a few cents per transaction, which is also for an investor an incredible advantage. For the loan taker, you can build up the credit history, which also allows them to later transition to the traditional banking sector if they want to, or simply to stay on the blockchain technology. It also helps for personal identification. It absolutely limits the currency rate loss, also through the combination of cryptocurrency, stable coins, which are pegged to local currency. And then you have more transparency and accountability. You have a great data storage, both fantastic for investors on the one hand, and then the loan takers on the other hand. They have their contracts through smart contracts based on the blockchain, which allows them to always have transparency in those contracts and contracts not getting lost, which can easily be the case in a developing country. And also you have a significantly reduced transactional payment costs. So massive advantages there. We do have some limitations as well when it comes to that, but which can be tackled. So any development initiative or impact initiative in a country always goes along with other things. In Uganda, you have about 23% of people that are illiterate. So any initiatives about blockchain for microcredits needs to go hand in hand with financial inclusion, literacy inclusion as well. But these are initiatives that are going on in the country anyways. You have the phone penetration has been limited, but is extremely increasing over the years. And also in East Africa, also specifically in Uganda, people are very open to new technologies. A lot of the transactions are currently taking place through mobile technology. So definitely open for that. Yes, thank you very much.
There's let me jump in there. It's quite interesting one because you know I some years ago I worked with the Cardano Foundation, and their early focus was using, of course, the blockchain also in developing country. And I think it makes sense, right? Because especially in those countries like, you know, sub-Sahara, that the development is at such a level that they just basically don't have a system, right? But in terms of application, like I saw pictures, you have been there. What would you say is like the biggest obstacle of rolling out this completely?
I think for some of those aspects, the internet sometimes can be a bit off, but this can be handled. For example, the project we have, Yes Impact blocks that operates in these communities that you've seen in the pictures. People have adopted this at high speed, and we're working with very simple phones. So you always have to adapt it to a very simple context as well, that the blockchain-based app is based on. And yeah, it has been adopted super rapid and can be used on offline, and when internet is back, it will go online.
Yeah, I think it was absolutely fantastic paper in terms of application, right? We all know that crypto, I think, in our hemisphere is more or less an investment vehicle. I think there are other regions of the world who can actually really benefit of this new technology in different use cases, right? So if we look then to our next author, this is Daniel. His paper was about DAO and governance, up-to-date topic from coming one of the newest things in crypto, right? So we slowly roll this trend out, but maybe Daniel, you want to jump in and go a little bit into detail of your paper.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tilmar. So yeah, for this this paper, I explored basically also if a DAO model could be relevant for more traditional companies, because we see a lot of things happening in the digital space, especially around governance. And a DAO is basically a new governance model. But before we explore this, it's maybe good to look a little bit at the history. So these this image that you see here, Vitalik Buterin, Dan Lamar, and the cypherpunks are basically all at the history of or the beginning of a DAO. Why, for example, the cypherpunks? Well, the cypherpunks were in the 90s already very concerned about privacy. They thought that governments should have less control, and that the control that they have and decisions that they would make, that this should be governed by code, because you can verify code and you can trust in a code. Back then, of course, blockchain technology was not available, but you could see them basically as the fathers, mothers of the current lex cryptographia, as we call it. Code is law. So this concept was taken over basically, and then Lamar first proposed something that are called decentralized autonomous corporations. He had still, I would say, a more profit making idea around DAOs. Basically, he saw a DAO as a corporation on the blockchain, and its sole purpose would be to make investments, to do business, and to give its shareholders, or in this case, token holders, profit. This concept was then taken off by Vitalik Buterin, and Vitalik Buterin actually made the concept a bit broader, in the sense that he said we have autonomous organizations, and this concept sticked actually. And the difference here is in his philosophy is that he saw a DAO more as an organization where humans would still be central, doing certain work, but decisions would still be made on the blockchain. And again, this would be verifiable in code. But sadly, the first DAO on the Ethereum blockchain failed due to a hack in the code, or a bug in the code actually, and hackers were able to basically retrieve a significant amount of money from the DAO. This actually led to a big controversy in the Ethereum community, as some of you might know, which resulted in the fork of the Ethereum blockchain and creating Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. So next slide, please. So now that we have a little bit of a fundament, what a DAO is, we can explore what DAOs generally do. And we saw actually quite a boom happening in the last couple of years. Although the first DAO failed, and it's been, I think, around 5 years now, maybe a bit more. In the last couple of years, in 2021 and 2022, a lot of new DAOs were founded. And this gave researchers actually the means to classify them. And I came across actually a really interesting white paper by the World Economic Forum. And this is a way to classify different types of DAOs. So you can classify them on 2 axes. Their objective, to generate something, for example. Associative, more where the person that joins the DAO associates themselves with the product that is being built. And the objective can be also very ad hoc, basically spring out of nothing. And then you have the means in which the DAO tries to get to its objective. When you see, for example, the axis now between the generative and the activity, you get, for example, a functional DAO. And this is to govern a network or an application. And this you could say Ethereum. Or you have a more generative approach. So and the means are value transfer. And this you saw with Olympus Pro, where they basically created a platform that allowed other projects to raise funds. But the whole project, the Olympus project, was governed by a DAO, and also the building of their investment platform was governed by it. Now, there are quite some interesting things to say about DAOs. They are also more either more decentralized or not decentralized. That depends on how many token holders the DAOs have. But one very clear characteristic is if decisions made by the DAO are verified in the code. So when a decision is made, that the code is executing, and for example, when the decision is made that the DAO would pay person Y, that this decision is directly executed on chain, and that nobody needs to be trusted. In the DAO spectrum, there are DAO purists that say DAO is not a DAO if it doesn't operate in this way, and if decisions are not made directly on chain. Within the literature, there is still some discussion about that, but that is quite interesting to take into account. Now, like I said, I wanted to answer if DAOs could be relevant for current corporations, and I looked then also at the challenges that DAOs have, and a lot of challenges are relatable to current governance models. For example, voter apathy. You have to motivate your voters to vote for your party or for your decision, and also in our world, in our political system, you have quite some voter apathy. This we also see in DAOs, in such a sense that some DAOs even become ungoverned. You can't govern them anymore because the core team can't motivate the token holders to make a decision where enough of the voters are voting for a certain decision. So there is a complete voter apathy. This basically stops the innovation of the DAO. Now, I also said there is somewhat decentralization or not, and that also happens when, for example, someone acquires by economical power the majority of the tokens in a DAO, and you might think, well, that then you need quite a huge amount of money. Well, I can tell you there are some DAOs that were a bit smaller, where there was basically a hostile takeover, and all the funds, the treasury funds of the DAO, were taken over by the token holder holding the majority. And then there is a certain participant churn in the DAO. So it's very hard to create a certain direction with the DAO. So where do we want to go in a couple of years? Because it's very easy to transfer these tokens, and these tokens are held by anonymous wallets, basically, or pseudonymous wallets. And a lot of token holders are there for the short run. So maybe they see holding the token as an interesting investment. They are enthusiastic about the project, but they don't want to be actively involved. And once they make their financial profit, they transfer the token to somebody else. And this other person needs to learn basically what is taking place in the DAO, what is their objective. And sometimes it's even really hard to agree on trivial things. And then, of course, there are the security risks. I believe all of you have heard in the news certain hacks in the crypto community. A lot of these hacks are due to bugs in smart contracts. So this is still happening, and this is also plaguing DAOs. So there are certain difficulties around the whole space that might make it even challenging for traditional companies to enter the space. Yet it might be a very interesting philosophy. Next slide, please. Because when we want to answer this question that I started, is this all, are DAOs now already relevant? We have to ask the questions if the companies are ready. DAOs are very transparent. Everything happens on chain. And this might be very interesting, but think also about the cases currently. We see in the news, for example, that Credit Suisse might or might not have some financial trouble. We cannot verify this. A radical transparency could be very good, but imagine that the books of Credit Suisse wouldn't be in the good state as they say they are. Everyone could see that. And that might be a problem for this entity. So thinking from the entity perspective, it's very hard to basically give this radical transparency. If we think about what would be the closest relationship that we currently have, I would say it's somewhat the companies of Ricardo Semler, where he is giving basically the shares back to his employees and completely stepping out of the day-to-day business. They don't really have managers and they fully trust in their employees, somewhat something like a DAO. But yet this total radical transparency is missing, and what is happening already with bigger companies is that it is very difficult to make decisions. So imagine introducing a governance model where basically everyone, every shareholder of the bank, or every account holder even of the bank can decide if the bank or any other institution invests in fossil fuels or not. This could be very good for our climate, for our society, but it might not be very good for the balance sheet of the bank and all the loans outstanding. So that is quite interesting. The other thing that is obviously very challenging at the moment is that there is no regulation surrounding DAOs. So obviously, before any big company could step into this space and say, I want to govern my company in the way that a DAO does, there would be a need for a regulatory framework. I came across actually this article from Gartner, and actually it sums up quite well my conclusions. It's currently the DAOs are increasing in their expectations. They're innovating a lot, as you could see also in the framework how to classify them, but it's very early on. I think we might even need to go through a phase of dissolution before we could see DAOs and applications surrounding DAOs being applicable in real life, or in real life in real companies that are currently operating.
Yeah, I agree on this one. It's something from the early starts. And like I always say, your banks just nowadays start to slowly understand how to accept Bitcoin, right?
Exactly.
So this is how long is this ago when you first had your first ledger, right? And now we come with this new concept of DAO. Yeah, I think this is some time to go. But do you have a favorite DAO project, and why is it your favorite?
Sure, I can answer that two ways. But first to talk about your point, I think what we are currently already seeing, for example, also in the NFT space, that there's experimentation by fashion brands and this kind of hip companies, music artists, etc. I think we would see first an adoption in this area or in these sectors before we would even see adoption in the financial world. I think that is definitely quite a long there's quite a long way to go because, like you said, even there's a challenge for banks to accept Bitcoin. Then to your question, Tilmar, there's two DAOs that I think are very interesting. One is Compound, and this is basically because of the sheer volume of amount assets under management that this DAO has. It's such a crazy amount, and it's also being researched by researchers across the globe, and very smart people are active in their forums. More altruistic one, I would say, is Klima DAO. And Klima DAO wanted to corner the market for energy certificates. They basically minted tokens that others bought, and with the money that they received for those tokens, they bought energy certificates, and they hope that the price of energy certificates would go up in such a way that companies need to innovate and not offset their carbon by buying these certificates, but really innovating and changing their behavior.
Yeah, oh, wow. I never heard about that application of the DAO, but I heard about the situation with the climate certificates. Well, I thought reading your paper, absolutely at the frontiers of research, you know, DAO is one of the new things, as we also see here on the screen. So thank you for handing in your paper, and another good reason why you're here on the webinar today.
Yeah.
Then for the last. Yes, pleasure. With the last speaker, so it's always not easy to be the last. So, you know, breathe in, breathe out. I give to Luis now, and then we listen to the fabulous paper of Jerome and his co-authors. And I think you wanted to try to share your screen or something, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because do you have a PDF or do you have the PowerPoint presentations over there?
I have the, let me see. Okay. Let me see. I'm not sure if I have the PowerPoint. Can you just present does it work?
I can share the screen otherwise.
Okay,
okay
yes,
you.
please go. I think you should be able to do it now, yes.
Okay.
Right, then I'm maybe already start like, yeah, last but not least, we are now talking about ESG and DeFi, and I think like this is a really interesting topic as well, especially like after the merge now from Ethereum 1.0 to 2.0. So now it's really about like responsible investing and also like about the future of blockchain, because yeah, it's always a discussion between proof of work and proof of stake. And I think maybe, yeah, you guys, Jerome and Cyril, you maybe give us some more insights, especially like regarding ESG and responsible investing in the crypto space. So it's your stage. Yeah, you can go.
Excellent. I think you just have to allow me to share the screen.
Yes, I thought so. I would stop here on my side, and then let me see if I can give you the right to do that. I think.
Work.
Yes, there you go.
Is it okay, guys?
Yes.
Yes, I can see the screen and the slides.
Stop again. That screen. And now the other one. This one. Yeah, I'll click it on the presentation.
Great. I think if it's visible for everybody, thank you very much for having us. Thank you also for accepting a little bit our generosity with a bit more slide. So basically what we did is try to reconcile ESG and DeFi. So ESG in traditional finance is the passport for any kind of investments to be eligible to be implemented in a single or multi-asset portfolio. This trend is very strong, as sometimes if an asset fails the ESG test or criteria, it's not eligible to be investable. So ESG stands for environment, social, and governance. DeFi, we don't have to explain what is DeFi. It's decentralized. And basically what we try to achieve, trying to marry ESG and DeFi, is first trigger and encourage the adoption of DeFi using the criteria that CFI is using all the time. And second, to find a way to get away from misconception or prejudice in DeFi, using a scale, using a rating system which is objective and scientific. So we didn't know that by doing so, we embarked on an incredible journey. First, to put under some same roof some criteria which are sometimes very distant parents. Some, just for example, just apply ESG to blockchains, apply ESG to DeFi, where the energy consumptions of blockchains is a fact, is measurable. Social and government criteria sometimes are very difficult to measure, and still are subject to a lot of subjectivity. So what we did, we had to circumscribe a little bit this holistic approach to be really focused on some few blockchains, a few protocols we're going to use throughout the study as cases and an object of measurements. There was a lot of research, but not directly related to both CeFi and DeFi. What we thought was good is engage conversations also with the industry experts, pension funds, people which were sometimes very defensive toward crypto in general. So we had to process a lot of information and try to bring something in a very consistent manner in order to come up with some results and quantitative outputs. So these are the protocols we decided to concentrate on: Basic3, Curve, AV, and Anchor. All the data are from March, but this doesn't change the principle. Then we had to choose different blockchains that we're going to use throughout the study. Basically, we had a two-layer analytical framework where we had both to measure and assess DeFi protocols, but at the same time, apply the same analytics to the blockchain, because all the DeFi protocols work on different blockchain. So maybe if you can lead us through the criteria, Cyril.
So after choosing the right projects, or like the right blockchains and the right DeFi protocols, we really had to find out what are the DeFi factors, what sub-factors do we have in environmental, social, and government, and which sub-factors are actually relevant to DeFi protocols and to the blockchain where they run on, because not all the factors are from traditional companies are important for a DeFi protocol, or we could also call it decentralized application, because as Jerome said, when we look at environmental on blockchains, their environmental impact is much more measurable. It's much more visible. And so we really can start to measure, and we really can make it transparent if you make an investment of is this investment environmental good or bad, or how bad is it, and you can compare it, and later on we will see you can also give it maybe a number, a yield or something. When it comes to social, it's very hard. It's the social to measure the social part is probably already hard, but then it's really subjective if something is positive or negative. But in the social part, we really measure kind of how good is the KYC, or how big is the lack of it, of AML? What does it mean? Is it financial inclusion or not? And I mean, financial inclusion really means like the interface also needs to be good, right? If we hear before that if we go to poor countries, they don't have smartphones like we have. So to understand the technology, you need a lot of education. So it needs to be simple. It needs to be easy, and you can measure these things. You can give them ratings. And we all try to do this. If you are an investor, you cannot look at all the protocols, you cannot look at all the decentralized organization. You really need to bring this ESG into it to give it a measure. When it comes to government, the thing is just more transparent than in traditional companies, because as we heard before, it's kind of, I wouldn't call it code is law in the absolute sense, but you really can see what people vote on. It's transparent, and a lot of the governance is just like transparent. And then you will need to dig into. You need to find out like who has the tokens. I think in the future will be much more visible who has the tokens. Thereon you can also make your measurements, your rating, and you can just make an ESG which is more true than what we have today for traditional companies. After kind of finding out which factors or sub-factors we want to use to rate the factors in our study, we had to kind of focus on a few of them. When I click next here, okay. So we also had to give it a rating scale to find out, does it work? So kind of how can we do it? And we decided to make a rating scale 1 to 5. And we pretty soon figured out, okay, the energy consumption of Ethereum back then was just not a fair comparison to the other protocols. And so we kind of we scaled up there to 1,000, because we had to say Ethereum just uses so much more energy. And we also highlighted this in this picture. So you can see on the left side in the blue circle, this little line, this would be all the 3 other protocols together and the energy consumption of them. So here we really see that even though probably proof of stake lacks in certain securities as a blockchain to make sure that kind of it's still decentralized. And we are wondering how it will be long term. Compared to the energy consumption of normal use cases, Ethereum before we had Ethereum 2.0, it was just not there to stay. We gave this a higher rating, and then we kind of tried to we kind of rated all the sub factors, and by the sub factors we made a main rating for different dimensions, because when you look at it here, yeah, here's okay. You really need to rate the blockchain by itself. You need to rate the DeFi protocol by itself, and you rate also the yield instrument, because the yield instrument, depending on where the yield is coming from, if the yield is coming from people that you just kind of liquidate, then it's probably socially not as good rating as other yield instruments. And on top of it, we would probably also need to rate the stable coins. But for our study, we just said, okay, stable coins, we just take them as hard currency, which they're not, which we all know by now for a fact. So we kind of then combined all these sub ratings to one rating, so that when you have a DeFi investment, that you really can say, okay, this DeFi investment has a rating, let's say in energy consumption or in environmental impact of a 1, in social of a 2, and in governance of a 2. As lower the rating, as better. And on the end, to make it even more simple, we kind of just combined these ratings. And for us, in the long term, you would need to give them a weight. You would need to weight it out. But to make it more simple, because it's already complex to kind of find all the right factors to measure them, we kind of kept it simple here, knowing that if you want to implement it later on in companies, you would need to add complexity to then on the end have a final simple score that people understand and hopefully trust if rated by the right organizations. So just a short input from the result, of course, because we kind of scaled up for the scoring for the environmental impact of energy consumption, the ratings of all the protocols which run on Ethereum were just like way out of the others, which was probably clear and intentional. But if you go on, then you can see like here, you really can see that Ethereum before being proof of stake, like out, it didn't make any sense anymore. But when we zoom in, you really can see that you can score like this pretty easy protocols. You can kind of see where they're standing, and you can give an investor very fast an overview of it if he trusts the rating and the company behind it. So when we look a little bit closer into it here, we see again the proof of work is really out of it. What we added here is kind of what's the API. So how much money do you get out of it? And then we combined the API rating that you would make with the factors that we rated. And when we go one further, then you can see here that when not looking at, we didn't rate how good the US dollar would be behind Terra Anchor, you could really say that the high yield that Anchor has was really good. But compared Curve as a protocol was standing out here very interestingly, because on Avalanche it had better ratings when it comes to ESG, and then still you had a good API on it, and it just kind of outlines that you can compare like these very easy protocols, but you still would need to do kind of the weighting of the protocols. Sharon, back to you.
Thank you. So what was interesting as well is such as for any kind of financial assets, you compute not only the expected returns, but the risk-adjusted return. And we wanted to compute some sort of ESG-adjusted return for the DeFi investments, because we believe that ex ante ES and G are also measures of a risk of the quality of an investment. Such as with the bond, you have the spread, you have the credit rating. It's exactly two sides of the same coin. And these are the results which we have. Sometimes if the ESG score is poor, then your IPY will be also negatively adjusted, as if you were buying an investment with a high promised return, but to get there, the risk of a drawdown will be much higher. So we have to take into consideration these two dimensions, and it's why, you know, the ESG adjusted return made sense to us. So did we solve the problem? I think we believe we're on the right way. If you want to build up a portfolio, you need an assessment of the quality of your investments. such as in high yield or credit, you want to know the default probability. And we've seen the volatility we had in DeFi with some protocols and the sell-off we had last summer. I think too little attention has been given to the S and G factor, and people were overwhelmingly concentrated on the E. So did we solve the equation? I think not totally, but I think we're on the right way. This is the right approach to deal with the things. So for example, stablecoin, we did not look at the stablecoin, but we've seen that stable is something that can be really unstable, as we have seen. The factor of S and G remain very subjective, and probably we'll have to be more granular in assessing the social impacts or the governance. So more tools and more regulation will bring a core set to circumscribe S and G in a better way. We've also had an equal factor of these different components. It's not entirely correct, because probably between S, G, and E, they're not equally important, but we didn't want to go one step further and try to say, okay, let's put a factor 2 on G compared to S, because over time things can move a little bit. So I think there are more perspective to do so, more research to be done. We believe it's good to have an organized framework that could, in the long run, if we have credit rating, like the rating from Standard & Poor's, Moody's, or Fitch, describing investments, and these ratings are recognized by the crypto investment community as credible and usable, we believe that this will be much more easy to win adoption, to win confidence, and also to have an independent source of qualification and assessment of DeFi protocols. Just as an example, there's a great site called defisafety.com. I think it's pretty new, and you can see that those guys are giving scores to Curve, Dopex, Serum, and any kind of PancakeSwap also, 54% rating. That's not good. So you see it also already an emergence of platforms trying to bring ratings. And we believe that this is still pioneer work. And we're very encouraged by the reception of our study. And we believe that going forward, this ESGVS DeFi report can be also useful as an investment tool. That's all for us. Thanks for your attention.
Great, thank you. I think that was really, really nice overview about like the topic, yeah, like crypto and ESG. And I think, like as you already said, like it's the future, and it's also like the future or like a part of DeFi. So I'm really curious about like how this will look in the future, and also like how this will have an impact on the investment decisions of different investors. So thank you from my side. Does somebody else has questions for you, like for Jerome and Cyril?
Very interesting. Thank you. ECG is such a, it's a hot topic at the moment. Can you share the slides afterwards? I've learned so much today. It's been very good. Thank you, guys, all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had all the different authors touching somehow the same industry, but then all from different perspective and angles. I think you guys did an outstanding job. Thanks for participating in this year's call for paper. We are now busy compiling all the papers and slides. And once we're done with this, then we will hand it out to you. And last but not least, to all the members of the association, which are approximately, I think, 8,000 plus, will then have access to your paper. Maybe last but not least to mention, there will be the second batch of the authors with the remaining authors on 8th of November. It's also Tuesday, I think, 7 p.m. Same concept if you like to join. That's the remarks. Luis, do you want to say some concluding remarks?
Just thank you everybody for joining like this year's call for papers. And hopefully like also you get like now maybe afterwards contacted by any members from the Crypto Valley Association when we send it out like to all the people. And yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe also meet you in the future somewhere at some conferences or something like that. And otherwise I'm also looking forward maybe you hand in for the next edition next year, another paper and maybe another update of your current paper. So yeah, looking forward to that one.
Absolutely, guys. In this sense, I would like to close the virtual conference for this evening. Thank you, everybody, so much. We're in touch with the continuous events and document sharing, and I hope to see you offline soon.
Thank you.
Bye,
Great.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good
Bye
night.
bye.
See you. Bye bye.